Hare Krishna, thank you all for joining to Bhagavad Sangha and attentive chanting. So let's continue. We're talking about Jaḍa Bharata and Maharaj Rahūgaṇa. It's amazing how a king has accepted as a laborer, or at least what he saw as a laborer at first, to be his guru now, and he has asked him many questions to clear his doubts. So Jaḍa Bharata is going to speak. So the title is Jaḍa Bharata Instructs King Rahūgaṇa. So the Brahman Jaḍa Bharata said, "My dear king, although you're not at all experienced, you are trying to speak like a very experienced man. Consequently, you cannot be considered an experienced man. An experienced person does not speak the way you are speaking about the relation between a master and a servant, or about material pains and pleasures." So these are two things that Jaḍa Bharata spoke about, and Maharaj Rahūgaṇa did not agree with him, and he had his own philosophy on that. And now Jaḍa Bharata is saying that you think you know what you're talking about, but you really don't know. So these are simply external activities. Any advanced, experienced man, considering the absolute truth, does not talk in this way. So Srila Prabhupada mentioned that Krishna similarly chastised Arjuna when he starts speaking in the Bhagavad-Gita in chapter 2, Sochayan Anavashochas Tvam Pragna Vadamascha Vasase. So Krishna said to Arjuna, while speaking learned words, you are lamenting for what is not worthy of grief. So similarly, here, Jaḍa Bharata is explaining to Maharaj that, you're talking on the material plane, you're talking on the externals. While speaking learned words, you are lamenting of what is not worth of grief. Similarly, among people in general, 99.9% try to talk like experienced advisors, but they are actually devoid of spiritual knowledge and are therefore like inexperienced children speaking nonsensically. Consequently, their words cannot be given any importance. One has to learn from Krishna or his devotee. If one speaks on the basis of this experience, that is on the basis of spiritual knowledge, one's words are valuable. At the present moment, the entire world is full of foolish people. So Bhagavad-Gita describes these people as mudas. They are trying to rule human society, but because they are devoid of spiritual knowledge, the entire world is in a chaotic condition. To be released from these miserable conditions, one has to become Krishna conscious and take lessons from an exalted personality like Jaḍa Bharata, Lord Krishna, and Kapiladev. That is the only way to solve the problems of material life. So people are trying to solve material problems with material solutions, and they're giving their own opinions on things, whereas the opinions should come from a higher authority, from Vedic knowledge. That's where the advice should come from, but people are giving their own advice. So what suits them, what they think is right. Well, there's no rights and wrongs. It's just like people's opinions. One thinks this is right, the other one thinks something else is right. But if you consult the Vedas, then that is the true right or wrong is mentioned in there, because that comes from God himself. So let's pray. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Mukram Kroti Vachalam Pangum Langyate Grim Yad Kirpa Tamahamandeshi Guru Ditaranam Brahmananda Madhavam Shitanya Ishwaram Hari Om Tassat Narayam Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narotamam Devim Sachvit Vyasam Tato Jayamuduriyat Nasta Preeshav Abhudareshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Nestiki Krishna. So Jaḍa Bharata continues. My dear king, talks of the relationship between the master and the servant, the king and the subject, and so forth are simply talks about material activities. People interested in material activities which are expounded in the Vedas are intent on performing material sacrifices and placing faith in their material activities. For such people, spiritual advancement is definitely not manifest. Men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruit activities for elevation to heavenly planets, resultant good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification, opulent life, they say there is nothing more than this. The conclusion is that unintelligent men with a poor fund of knowledge cannot understand Bhagwan, Brahman, or Paramatma. But after studying the Vedas and attaining the understanding of the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one is supposed to be on the platform of perfect knowledge. So then he continues to say, a dream becomes automatically known to a person as false and immaterial. And similarly, one eventually realizes that material happiness in this life or the next, on this planet or a higher planet, is insignificant. When one realizes the Vedas, although an excellent source, are insufficient to bring about direct knowledge of the truth, one must come to the conclusion that even the Sattva Gun platform is also not good. One may dream that he has become a king with a good family, wife, and children, but immediately at the end of the dream, he comes to the conclusion that is false. Similarly, all kinds of material happiness are undesirable for a person who wants spiritual salvation. If a person does not come to the conclusion that he has nothing to do with any kind of material happiness, he cannot come to the platform of understanding the absolute truth. Or tattva, gyan, karmi, jnanis, yogis are after some material elevation. The karmis work hard day and night for some body comfort, and the jnanis simply speculate about how to get out of the entanglement of karma and merge into the Brahman effulgence. The yogis are very much addicted to the acquisition of material perfection and magical powers. So everybody's looking for some kind of gratification, and which really is not going to elevate us spiritually, and it's very temporary. This is that brother is saying that even material happiness and distress is all temporary. It comes and goes, and why give so much attention to that? As long as the mind of the living entity is contaminated by three modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, his mind is exactly like an independent, uncontrolled elephant. It simply expands its jurisdiction of pious and impious activities by using the senses. The result is that the living entity remains in the material world to enjoy and suffer pleasures and pains due to material activities. So it's mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is said that material, pious, and impious activities are both opposed to the principle of devotional service. Devotional service means mukti, freedom from material entanglement. But pious and impious activities result in entanglement within this material world. So even if you do impious activities, you're just causing more bondage to yourself, because obviously you want a result, right? If you're doing pious activity, you want some kind of benefit out of it. If the mind is captivated by the pious and impious activities mentioned in the Vedas, one remains eternally in darkness. One cannot attain the absolute platform. To change the consciousness from ignorance to passion, or passion to goodness, doesn't really solve the problem. As stated in Bhagavad-Gita, Saguna Samiti Yetan Brahma Bhuya Kalpate. One must come to the transcendental platform, otherwise life's mission is never fulfilled. So you might have a better life, if you're just working in the three gunas, ignorance, passion, and goodness, but you still within those boundaries. You never be able to get out of that entanglement. You just like you have a better situation, but you still stuck in there. Still in that prison. Because the mind is absorbed in desires for pious and impious activities, it is naturally subjected to the transformation of lust and anger. In this way, it becomes attracted to material sense enjoyment. In other words, the mind is conducted by the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. There are 11 senses and 5 material elements. Out of these 16 items, the mind is the chief. Therefore, the mind brings about birth in different types of bodies among demigods, human beings, animals, birds, so according to our situation. When the mind is situated in a higher or lower position, it accepts a higher or lower material body. So the mind decides, or it's how it functions decides our body. Material existence means being fully controlled by material nature. The mind is the center for accepting the dictations of material nature. In this way, the living entity is carried away in different types of bodies continuously, millennium after millennium. So one could be a king, one could be a master, one could be a servant. We have been masters in the past, we have been servants. These relationships or designations, they just keep changing. There's nothing permanent about them. You're not permanently a master, permanently a servant. These are just temporary situations, come and go. The materialistic mind covering the living entity's soul carries it to different species of life. This is called continued material existence. Due to the mind, the living entity suffers or enjoys material distress and happiness. Being thus illusioned, the mind further creates pious and impious activities and their karma, thus the soul becomes conditioned. So Shubha explains that mental activities under the influence of material nature cause happiness and distress within the material world. Being covered by illusion, the living entity eternally continues conditioned life under different designations. Such living entities are known as Nitya Pada, eternally conditioned, which is like us. On the whole, the mind is the cause of conditioned life. Therefore, the entire yogic process is meant to control the mind and senses. If the mind is controlled, the senses are automatically controlled, and therefore the soul is saved from the reactions of pious and impious activity. If the mind is engaged at the lotus feet of the Lord Krishna, Savai Manha Krishna Pad Arvindo, the senses are automatically engaged in the Lord's service. When the mind and senses are engaged in devotional service, the living entity naturally becomes Krishna conscious. As soon as one always thinks of Krishna, he becomes a perfect yogi. As confirmed by Bhagavad-Gita, yoginam api sarvesham mad gatnantar atmana. This ant atma, the mind, is conditioned by material nature, as stated here. Maya rachitan antar atma swadhainam smasti chakra kutha. The mind, being the most powerful, covers the living entity and puts him in the waves of material existence. So Jaḍa confirming that everything happens because of the mind, who we are, how we think, our suffering, everything is all due to the mind. Excuse me. The mind makes the living entity with this material world wander through different species of life. And thus the living entity experiences mundane affairs in different forms as a human being. Demigod, fat person, skinny person, and so forth. Learned scholars say that body appearance, bondage, and liberation are caused by the mind. Just as the mind is the cause of bondage, but it can also be the cause of liberation as well. The mind is described here as para avar. Para means transcendental and avar means material. When the mind is engaged in the Lord's service, it is called para, transcendental. When the mind is engaged in material sense gratification, it is called avar, or material. At the present moment, our conditional state or our mind is fully absorbed in material sense gratification, but it can be purified and brought to its original Krishna consciousness by the process of devotional service. So the mind needs to be purified. There are 5 working senses and 5 knowledge acquiring senses. There is also the false ego. In this way, there are 11 items for the mind's functions. O hero, the objects of the senses, such as sound and touch, the organic activities such as evacuation and the different types of bodies, society, friendship, and personality are considered by learned scholars the fields of activity for the functions of the mind. So the mind is the controller of the 5 knowledge acquiring senses and the 5 working senses. Each sense has its particular field of activity. In all cases, the mind is the controller or owner. But the false ego, one thinks oneself the body and thinks the terms in terms of my body, my house, my family, my society, my nation, and so on. These false identifications are due to the expansions of the false ego. Thus, one thinks that he is this or that, thus the living entity becomes entangled in material existence. So he was talking about the mind, and now he has turned into the false ego as well, how we start identifying with our body and our status and our family. The physical elements, nature, the original cause, culture, destiny, and the time element are all material causes. Agitated by these material causes, the 11 functions transform into hundreds of functions, and then into thousands, and then into millions. But all these transformations do not take place automatically by material combination. Rather, they are under the direction of the Supreme Personality Godhead. The individual soul, bereft of Krishna consciousness, has many ideas and activities created in the mind by the external energy. They have been existing from time immemorial. Sometimes they are manifest in the awakening state and the dream state. But during deep sleep or trance, they disappear. A person who is liberated in this life can see all these things vividly. So if one takes to Krishna service, he is liberated, even though he appears to be conditioned soul within the material world. In any condition, one is to be considered liberated if his only business is to serve Krishna. So there's different kinds of muktas. One, so if you start to see that there is a difference between us and, we are similar yet different to the Lord. Our Atma is different, although it's the same quality, but it's different to Paramatma. Like that, when you start seeing that I'm not this body, I'm a spirit soul, then you are a kind of mukta, right? Or liberated. But Jagbhat mentions that the real mukta is the one who understands that I'm not this body, I'm a spirit soul, and I am a servant of Krishna. This is the thing. So a lot of the people have realized, especially in the Indian community or civilization, that we are not this body, we are spirit soul. But how many have realized that we are also the servants of Krishna? And sometimes people find that hard to digest as well, that we actually meant to be servants, we meant to serve. So that part is difficult for people to understand. But that is real mukti, when you realize that I'm not just a spirit soul, I'm also a servant at the same time. Who are the pure devotees mentioned here? In an assembly of pure devotees, there is no question of discussing material subjects like politics and sociology. In an assembly of pure devotees, there is no discussion only of the qualities, forms, and pastimes of Supreme Personality Godhead. He is praised and worshipped with full attention. In the association of pure devotees, by constantly hearing such topics respectfully, even a person who wants to merge into the existence of the absolute truth abandons this idea and gradually becomes attached to the service of Vasudeva. So this is the other thing that people think we are, who think or who have understood that we are not this body, we are spirit soul, but then they want that spirit soul to become one with the Paramatma. When they leave this body, or they think they will become one, so they consider themselves and Paramatma as equals. And this is what Krishna consciousness teaches us, that we are not equals, we are servants. So, but most, this impersonal philosophy, Nirankar philosophy, that we will become merged into Krishna and we will become one. You will not become one, because we are same polity, but we are still separated energies of Krishna. We're not Krishna. We're not Paramatma. We're separated eternally. In a previous birth, I was known as Maharaj Bharat. So Jaḍa Bharata is explaining his previous life now. In a previous birth, I was known as Maharaj Bharat. I attained perfection by becoming completely detached from material activities through direct experience and through indirect experience. I received understanding from the Vedas. I was fully engaged in the service of the Lord, but due to my misfortune, I became very affectionate to a small deer, so much that I neglected my spiritual duties. Due to my deep affection for the deer, in my next life, I had to accept the body of a deer. So he has confessed to Maharaj Jaḍa Bharata that, look, I have come through these lives. I was also a king a couple of lifetimes ago, but I sort of fell down due to my misfortune. My dear heroic king, due to my past sincere service to the Lord, I could remember everything of my past life, even while in the body of a deer. Because I am aware of the fall down in my past life, I always keep myself separate from the association of ordinary men. Being afraid of their bad materialistic association, I wander alone unnoticed by others. Simply by associating with exalted devotees, anyone can attain perfection of knowledge, and with the sword of knowledge can cut to pieces the illusory associations within this material world. Through the association of devotees, one can engage in the service of the Lord by hearing and chanting. Thus, one can revive his dormant Krishna consciousness, and sticking to the cultivation of Krishna consciousness returns home back to Godhead even in this life. So this is the explanation of Jaḍa Bharata. So he's explaining this, that is this happiness and distress is it's up to us. Do we want to be distressed? Do we want to be happy? It's a state of mind, right? It's a state of mind whether you want that. And happiness, and we got to understand from the viewpoint of the scriptures that happiness is not permanent, and distress is not permanent. They like the seasons, they come and go, they come and go. And, to be honest, one problem solves itself, another one turns up. So we might well accept it that this is material life. We're not meant to be constantly happy. We want things to go our way all the time, but that's not how it works. And this is why we get distressed, because things don't go our way, how we want them to be. One problem is solved, another one is ready. One problem is solved, another one. There might be a little gap in between, or sometimes there's no gap. It's continuous, one after another, one after. So we have to accept it. This is Dukyalam Ashashva. This is the material world. This is how it is. Material world is not meant to be happy. So why, the distress and happiness, we need to keep on a balance in happy times, sad times. stay on the level. Because the happier we get in a happy time, the distress we'll feel in the distress time. So we have to keep a balance. And the other designations, who's a servant, who's a master, they keep changing, who is a servant, who's a master. Plus, they are all material, right? The real master is one who has knowledge. He is the spiritual master, one who has real knowledge of spiritual life. That's what real knowledge is all about. So thank you so much, and nice to have you all on this call. Hina Mataji, Shani Mataji, Jai Prabhu, Madhav Shamsundar Prabhu, Partha Prabhu, Sarvashri Mataji, and Radharani. Thank you so much, and love to hear from you. We'll start with Sarvashri Mataji, and then we go on to Hina Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna to everybody.
Hare Krishna.
Jaḍa Bharata is giving Rahūgaṇa real knowledge. There are two kinds of knowledge. One is material knowledge, and then the other one is spiritual knowledge. Material knowledge is for material advancement when we living now. This is just a material, and then the spiritual knowledge is about ourselves, who we are, and who is Supreme Personality of God, who is Krishna. That is the real knowledge. And the living entity, what they should do in this world, and what activates everything. It's the mind. He was focusing on the mind today. That to Rahūgaṇa, that mind is the cause of everything. And if we want to have a real knowledge, we should get the knowledge from the real Vaishnava or the disciplic succession, like the four people belong to four sampradayas, Brahma, Sri Rudra, or Kumar. They're the people who actually have a real knowledge of the supreme truth. That's why, but hearing from the so many people who are giving the knowledge, but the misguiding the people, but hearing people from non-Vaishnava, they say it's like it's from milk is pure, but when it's touched by a serpent, purpose outside in his purpose, it is touched by snake, it becomes poison. So if you want to have a real knowledge, it's just like Rahūgaṇa getting from Jaḍa Bharata. And mostly people, they read Vedas, but they just follow Karma Kand, and Karma Kand they do for material benefit. My purpose for the Vedas is to know Krishna. If you know Krishna, that means you have read all the Vedas. And the intelligence of the living entity is stolen away by the activities of sense gratification and falls into the dark world of material existence. The sense of gratification, that the whole world is busy. And just what earn the money, buy new houses, buy new cars. If you see somebody got new big car, you want better than that. It's all such sense of gratification. And that's how we are living in the dark world. Through the mind, the mind is the cause of all pious, impious activities. And get different, because of the different activities, pious, impious, we get different bodies in our next life. And according to our body, we get happiness sometimes we get distress and we suffering. So it is all our activities. And they say mind is the cause of liberation and the mind is cause of bondage. When the mind is engaged in Lord's service, it's called transcendental, and senses get purified as well. When the mind is engaged in sense gratification, it is called all material. So we try to engage our mind uh, to Krishna, do devotional service, and control mind is to control our mind. But if you control the mind, if you control your senses, you have got succeeded everything. Because yeah, this world, everybody is lust mind, is lusty. If you want to see anything, you want it. And that if you can't get anything, sometimes you get angry. And when you get angry, then your intelligence is lost. You get bewildered. And people can do anything. They get any way to get the things what they want because they don't know whether it's right way or wrong way. But because their intelligence is bewildered and is caused by the mind. That intelligence control the mind, but sometimes mind goes over the intelligence. It might the intelligence be bewildered. So the mind is that Jaḍa Bharata is talking about the mind, how to go and is the fourth of our next life, next activities we are doing, and the bondage. So we have how to get out of this material world, and that means you have to control your mind. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Yeah, it's bewildering. The mind is so powerful that not only does it control this life, it controls our future lives as well. And it's already preparing us for future lives. And there's so many people making money out of mind problem. There's so many mental issues people have, especially in the Kali Yuga. Mental problem is a big issue. And these psychiatrists and the psychologists, and they're making so much money out, especially places like America and like that. They have their personal psychiatrists, shrinks they call them. They visit them regularly, get advice, and they are traumatized or whatever problems they have. They pay them regularly big fees to help them with the mind. And mind plays tricks. It can be out of control. It can be like an elephant, right? It can elephant in a Chinese shop. It can create so much damage to us. So how do we get strong? Like you mentioned, we need stronger intelligence. We can't, by our own intelligence, we cannot control the mind. We need some divine intervention. We need some divine intelligence or divine knowledge that will strengthen our intelligence to be able to control the reins of the mind and control the horses of the senses. Thank you, Mataji, so much. Hina Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Pranam, everyone. Really nice. Past apologies. I'm feeling a little bit ill today, so I'll try my best to speak. Yeah, I think that made some really, really nice points. They started with talking about how we should be very selective where we seek guidance from. For example, like material sources are not ideal. Really should be referring to spiritual sources for advice. And we talked about some points around how highest abilities in this world are still binding, and it is only bhakti really that gives us complete freedom. And then I like the points around the false ego, all of this stuff, our position, our family, nationality, we get so attached to the externals. We actually think that's us, whereas these are all temporary designations. We've forgotten really what our real identity is. As you mentioned, it's not, a lot of people are probably aware that we're spirits, but very few would actually know that really the true position is the same position. So in all these temporary designations, we shouldn't get too hung up about things. As you mentioned, everything changes in due time. So we're, even like our stages in life as they change, and so it's really just focus on really what matters. And who we really are. And thank you very much for leading us about the mind as well, and how important it is to control the mind. And it's only through bhakti, and then in doing that, in the sense of control as well. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hari. Thank you so much. Yeah, with regards to happiness and distress, you try and I'm sure we go through this, all of us, same thing. We have the three kinds of miseries. And times you try and do the right thing. You think you've ticked all the boxes, you've done the right thing, but then there be spanner in the works from externally, or with people. Relationships are complicated. Things don't go always to plan. We have our own way of thinking, other people have their own way of thinking. We have our agenda, they have their agenda, like that. This is just one example that how we cannot control. We don't have any control over any situation, right? We definitely can't control Adi Devik, right? And Adi Bhotik, we can't control either. We can't control people, right? And Adi Atmik, we talking about the mind, we really don't seem to have much control, but at least we can work on that one. It is ours. We can try and work on that. The Atmic, the problems of the mind, we can work. Body, yes, we can try, take the right medication if you need it, do whatever you need to do to, bring it to a level that is bearable. So Adi Atmic, we can try. Bhotik and Devik, we don't always have control, but again, we can try and reduce the effects. If it's raining, we carry umbrella or a raincoat like that. So we can mitigate problems in life, right? But we should not dwell on them. This is the important thing. We don't dwell on happiness and distress. We see it, we observe it, and we mitigate it if we can, but we don't dwell on it, and we move forward. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna Partha Prabhu. Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Sorry, I missed most part of the class today, but listening to the points, I just want to share a few points, Prabhuji. Like we are reading Bhagavatam 1.8.35, and in which it's a Kunti Devi prayers, and she was saying that one of the reasons why Lord descends is to regenerate the process for the people, like remembering, hearing, and worshipping. So these three are actually related to the mind, intelligence, and senses. So worshipping for senses, intelligence for the knowledge, and remembrance is for the mind. So these two are actually between the soul and the body, as explained in the same chapter, chapter 6, that which is that soul is higher than the intelligence, higher than the mind, body, and senses in the body. So these three should be engaged rightly in Krishna consciousness. Then we have a chance of going back to Godhead. And I was reading Chaitanya Charan Prabhu's text on chapter 6. It was said like, what our mind thinks we need is different from what actually soul needs. So when mind doesn't get that what it needs, it will look for the temporary pleasures. So like a painkiller, and you are suppressing the actual disease by giving a painkiller. So instead of that, if you engage your mind in Krishna consciousness, that will give you an eternal happiness. That's all, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Beautifully put, Prabhu. Thank you. That's great points. Yes. And they also say that our mind is always dwelling either on the past or is contemplating the future. And why does it do that? Mind tends to go either thinking about the past, the future, what can become, nice or maybe not. So it's mainly usually because we're not satisfied with the present. If you're satisfied with the present, why would you need to keep looking into the past or keep thinking about the future? We need to be in the present, and in this yuga, we find it very difficult to stay in the present. We're just not satisfied with things things are not to our satisfaction, to up to a standard. So, we'll always better before, it's always better before. When you look back, it's always better before. People talking, oh, I remember the good old days, always the good old days. Well, these will be the good old days in a few years' time.
Yes.
The present is what becomes past, right?
Yes.
Present then goes on to the future. It's like that. So we got to keep the mind in the present as much as we can. We can learn from the past and
Sure.
plan for the future, but we should stay in the present and do the necessary here and now.
Sure.
Here and now we'll decide our future.
Sure. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhu. And Jay, Prabhu has made a few points. The mind can be a friend or an enemy, as mentioned in Bhagavad-Gita 6.6. The uncontrolled mind is the greatest enemy of the living entity, the uncontrolled mind. If one neglects an uncontrolled mind, it will become more and more powerful. Absolutely. As long as one identifies with the body, is not freed from the contamination of material enjoyment. Yeah. Has not conquered the 6 enemies of life, has not come to the platform of self-realization, the living entity will have to suffer misery by wandering around in different species of life in the material universe. Absolutely. The mind can be conquered by the serving the lotus feet of Krishna. So here's a solution. All the senses should be engaged in activities relating to Krishna. The yogic process is meant for controlling the mind and the senses. When one always thinks of Krishna, they have become a perfect yogi. One who always acts in Krishna consciousness is not bound by the reactions of pious and impious activities. Thank you so much. Yeah, so the yogic process in this age is not to sit and meditate, but to chant and dance here the Mahamantra. So unless there's anything else, we'll go and do that. We will do our yogic process and chant the Mahamantra now. I know Mataji were busy today, Pareen Mataji, she messaged. So Sarveshi Mataji, we could do around, and Padre Prabhu, you okay do around?
Okay, Prabhuji.
Nice, thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.